Here's the truth about growing your brand in 2025, the lessons, the mistakes, and what you can do differently. In 2024, I was made redundant from my job, and I thought I had all the strategy in the world to just go full throttle into full time entrepreneurship, getting all the clients, getting paid on time, just getting the visibility, getting all the conversions and everything. But I reached a point when there were just crickets, no engagement, no clients. And I'm just going to talk to you like very honestly about what happened and some of the mistakes I realized I was making in my side also with a 9 to 5 while I was building my brand. I have always been known as the Canva girl here on YouTube. I'm known for creating videos on Canva. I'm known for doing Canva trainings and masterclass and workshop and doing the tutorials. But one of the things I find was that I was creating a lot of content based on what I wanted, based on what I like, based on what I thought my audience wanted. And I was missing the mark on that. So even though I was just getting some views, had getting some conversions, I was getting some tractions, I was getting some clients, it reached a point where it was just crickets. And one of the things I identified that was not working for me was my messaging. This is the first mistake. So, one of the things before I became more known for branding, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of why I got into focusing more on branding. One of the things or the mistakes I used to make was focusing a lot on the visuals, the pretty graphics. And that is one of the reasons why when I talk about branding mistakes now, I can talk from a place of me going through it myself. And I used to focus a lot on the pretty graphics. I mean, I do graphic designing, that's what I love, that's what I talk about. And it's nice to have really great graphics and the layout is good and beautiful. But if the graphic that you're creating does not resonate, does not connect emotionally, or engages your audience in any way, then you're missing the mark. And I realized I was missing the mark not only from a graphic standpoint, but more from a messaging standpoint. Now, hear me out. I really got more interested in branding because I used to get clients who wanted me to just design graphics for them. And then they went along their merry little way, you know, just using the graphics, but then after a while, they stopped using the brand colors, the brand identity was all over the place. And what I realized for them, they were getting the branding visuals incorrect. And so I decided, hey, I'm going to jump into branding, helping my clients to get this branding correct from a visual standpoint, the identity standpoint. But not only were they missing the visuals, they were also missing the messaging. And I too realized I was missing the messaging element of my brand. And so that was the first mistake I realized I was making. So that came down to one, not being very clear on who my audience was. So sure, on my YouTube channel, I'm creating these tutorials. Anybody who loves Canva would come to my channel, watch a video, but a lot of my videos were not very pointed, they were not very clear in terms of what is the specific pain point I was trying to solve through creating these videos. Mind you, they're great videos, but it wasn't resonating or connecting in the way it could. So one of the first mistakes you can just be aware of is your messaging. I've talked about it here on this channel, but I have also made this mistake, and it has been something that I have been focusing on improving. And how I've been doing that is through better knowing and understanding my audience. Now, this is not an overnight thing. You don't just instantly get up tomorrow morning and know your audience like the back of your hand. It takes like having conversations with them, getting to understand the pain points, getting to understand their desires, and being able to create value for them. And so, even a video like this is perfect for my audience who is building their brand and growing their brand and want to know some of the mistakes they might be making. So, sure, you might have really great visuals, but does that visual connect with your target audience? If you are not talking to the people who you're really targeting, then you're missing that mark and you're wasting a lot of time creating all the content. My second mistake was just not being consistent. No, I recently have been talking about how consistent I've gotten, but before I got more consistent, one of the things I really struggled with was consistency. And consistency not from a standpoint of frequency, but consistency in terms of my brand, how I showed up, how I communicated, my tone, my voice. All those things take into account when you're building a brand. So, sure, I've always gotten the visual identity part done pretty good, I would say. But one of the things I was missing is just the same tone, talking to my audience. And I was really missing that part, which goes back to point number one, which was not having a clear messaging and not knowing my audience very well so I could talk to their pain points. Not knowing my audience pain points really diluted or didn't make my brand as effective as it was. And so all of these things take into account in not really converting, right? So anytime you realize, boy, there's some amount of conversion not happening, you have to really do an assessment. And so when I started out at the beginning of the year, just really going full throttle into creating the content, into mapping out what I was doing, into rolling out new services and new offerings, I had to spend a lot of time getting to know my audience, crafting the messaging, getting the tone correct, getting the voice correct, and also being better with consistency, being on brand in how I communicate, on brand in terms of my visuals, tightening it up a bit, and also working on the frequency, of course. We cannot miss that. And then one of the things that I found when I got more consistent, since I have really been getting better at it, is that you're able to identify what is working and what is not working. It also helps me, and it can help you as well, to identify what are the things that I can improve. Do I still need to work on tweaking my message? Is there something I'm just not getting? Am I not understanding the pain point? Am I not speaking about something that is relevant to them? Am I not communicating the value that I can provide? Am I not communicating how clearly I can help you and help you to transition or transform from one point to another? These are all things that we have to take into account when building and growing our brand. And so that was one of the things I would say was also a mistake for me. No, I'm going to jump into my phone because I want to just go through my phone. My gallery gives me a very good idea of what my 2025 in terms of building my brand has been looking like. No, I've been doing a lot of things, right? And a lot, when I talk about a lot of things, one of those a lot of things is me talking a lot to my audience. So for Q1, I have been talking a lot to my audience. And one of the first things how I got to just better understand my audience was I rolled out this service of helping 10 service-based women entrepreneurs to refine their brand. What if growing your brand this year didn't have to feel like you have to be on all the time? What if you could show up with clarity, courage, and confidence while connecting with the right people? I am on a mission to help 10 women entrepreneurs transform the way they brand their business and show up on social media this year. I've come to realize that building a brand is much more than being seen. It's okay to be seen. It's nice to be seen. But why are you doing what you do? Are you allowing your personality to shine through? Are you pushing through the comfort zones and the fears? Do you know what is working and what isn't? And are you connecting with the right audience authentically in a way that is true to you, in a way that isn't following the trends and trying to, meet the algorithms or all the things that people are telling you, or jumping on a strategy that is working for others but probably won't work for you? I have had heart to heart conversations with these women filled with just raw emotions and honesty and hope in terms of them building a business and building a brand. And what they want is to build a brand they love, to position themselves online, to connect with their audience, to show up consistently with purpose, and to make money doing what they love. If you want to follow the journey for the highlights and the growth of these women and their brands, and how I will be helping these women to brand their business this year, keep watching. And the key thing I wanted to do with these women was to, one, understand what are the challenges they're having with growing their brand presence and getting clients. And it wasn't even about just getting the clients, but growing their brand presence and being consistent from being on brand, consistent in terms of creating content for frequency, and just being able to engage your audience effectively. So I rolled out this service offering it to 10 women for free, and I jumped on some client calls. During these client calls, I had some really heart to heart conversations with these women. So during these calls, I just got an understanding of, one, the pain points my audience was going through. I ended up creating a framework called the Create Framework that is pretty much my approach that I have used in my 9 to 5, and I've refined it since I've gone full time into entrepreneurship in terms of creating content that is on brand and that is consistent. If you have ever struggled with what to post, or your content feel like it is all over the place, you lack clarity, you lack direction, you're inconsistent, then this framework is for you. It's the Create Framework. This is the exact framework that I have used to create content for myself to be on brand, but I've also utilized the same framework to help clients to show up more consistently and on brand. One of the things as an entrepreneur is that you're thinking about building a business. You're actually building a business, but you're also building a brand. And on top of that, they're telling you that you need to be creating content. Listen, that's a lot for any entrepreneur, especially if you're in that phase of growing and pivoting. And so one of the things you want to do is to have the clarity, have the strategy, and a system for consistency. That is what the Create Framework does for you. It helps you with all the things to get clearer, to have strategy, and to be more consistent. So this framework is very structured, but it also has some actionable steps that you can take. So when you're creating content, you don't feel overwhelmed, you don't feel stressed out, and it makes your life easier. If you want to access this framework, click the link below. Based on the conversations with these women, understanding my audience, I was able to create a lead magnet and also able to create a service that can help women entrepreneurs who wanted to refine and grow their brand. So after having those calls, one of the things what I've done is, outside of creating a lead magnet, was just creating a lot of content about branding mistakes women are making, and it has been getting some traction, which made me realize, okay, I'm touching on a pain point that my audience is struggling with. No, I think I missed something that I wanted to mention. One of the things I did while I was having these calls was, one, so the first thing was, when they decided, like, hey, I want to be a part of this, the first thing I did was to audit their socials. So I went through their socials. They chose a social media platform they wanted me to focus on. I looked at their graphics, I looked at their message, I looked at the frequency, I looked at just how they were positioning themselves and some of the gaps and the opportunities they had. And trust me when I tell you, it was the same thing. It was, not using the right brand colors, but also having so much on their plate, juggling a 9 to 5, juggling all the things in their business and not being able to do it effectively because they didn't have a system. And so based on all of that, I jumped on a strategy call with them, gave them, a roadmap for the next 3 months of how they can show up, the things they can refine. And similar to what I was struggling with, some of them were also struggling with, building or creating content, I should say. And that was mostly because they didn't fully understand their audience, which meant a lot of the graphics were generic and a lot of the messaging was very generic. All right. So that was something that I did in Q1 that really helped me to better understand my audience and help me with terms of building my brand. In getting to better know my audience, there were a few things that shifted for me. One, I started identify which platforms is my audience on? Are they on Instagram? Are they on LinkedIn? And if they're on there, what's the format they prefer, right? So I had to look at, do they like long form videos? Do they like short form videos? But also bearing in mind what was the type of content I wanted to share for them. So it was a mix of what I wanted, but also a mix of what my audience wanted, which created just a beautiful, I would call it just a beautiful experience for me in terms of creating content. So one of the things I was just really testing out, I was just testing out a lot of things, and that's something you want to do when building your brand. You want to create an opportunity for you to test and experiment with your content types. Are you going to be on YouTube? If you're going to be on YouTube, are you going to do shorts or are you going to do long form content? Are you going to go live? So earlier this year, I went live. I went live, I think, 3 days in a row, just walking my audience through how to use Canva in their business. And the traction was pretty good. But I did realize, based on my data, that there was one particular topic that my audience gravitated more towards, and that was how to use Canva for social media, especially when they were overwhelmed with time, which meant I was creating something specifically that my audience was struggling with or was challenged with or had a pain point with, that I was solving through that content. So that's what I mean when I'm saying understanding my audience. No, going live didn't always mean I had a lot of persons viewing in the moment. But what I did after creating that live video was just chopping it up and posting like shorter clips on my YouTube channel that has just been getting some traction. Also, based on that, I noticed that I started getting persons, like I'd say leads, who will reach out to me to say, hey, I watched this particular video and I'm interested to learn more from you or work with you. So one of the things I'm saying is that when you test and experiment, one, you'll identify what is the type of content your audience is gravitating towards, and the data will really tell you. So a big thing I don't want to leave out is that outside of being known for Canva, one of the areas I'm really building a foundation and building some amount of awareness and authority in is branding. No, a lot of persons might not know me, or my audience might not know me to talk a lot about branding. So that's what I've realized will take some time, and that's something you can learn. So if you're going to be talking about something different, you're building authority in a new field or a new era, it will take some time and traction. It will not happen overnight, which means sometimes you might not get clients right out the gate. And I'm talking to you about this because I'm instantly realizing I'm talking to you about this issue, which was something that in the moment I was like, why is it not working? Not realizing I needed more time and traction. So not getting the clients, not getting the leads in the moment doesn't mean it's not working. Sometimes you need some more time and traction. Another thing I want to just touch on in terms of just lessons is, one, choose one platform. You can choose one platform and go deep dive into it for like 30 days. It doesn't have to be 30 consistent days, but over a period of 30 days, whether you want to do 3 times for the week, 2 times for the week, 4 times for the week, however frequently, and try different content formats, content types, and see what is getting traction. So case study. So I have been, more on Instagram than YouTube. At the top of the year, I was just creating some live videos on YouTube, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back to the drawing board, assess why some things are not working, and just get to know my audience better, reevaluate, and start creating content that would provide value for my audience based on my service and my offerings. And so I spent a lot of time on Instagram. And so when I started out focusing on Instagram earlier this year, I was spending a lot of time in Instagram stories. And the traction from Instagram stories was very interesting because, one, it created an opportunity for me to, one, to better get to know my audience, but two, have conversations with them, right? So I would have DM conversations with them. I would run polls, I'll do stickers, I would do all these things, just talking to my audience, getting a better understanding of them. One of my system with creating Instagram stories at the top of the year was really making it a bit light but also structured in a way. I had to have some structure. And so when I was just focusing on stories, I would post almost every day. I would share a little bit of a personal, story, like, my morning walks, but then I would almost like taking them throughout my journey for the day. And I would share with them, like, hey, what is something that you're working on? I'd ask them questions, like being genuinely interested in them. And some persons would respond to the polls, they would even send a DM, they would ask me questions, that kind of thing, which created an opportunity for me to realize, okay, so when I create this type of content, I get conversations. When I create this type of content, it's crickets. So for Q1 looked like for me, one, testing and experimenting with different content types, different content formats, video lengths, platforms. Of course, I'm used to being on YouTube, I'm used to being on Instagram, but showing up in a different way using Instagram stories. And then I also experimented with frequency. So I experimented with, like, if I posted every day, what would the engagement be like? What would the traction be like? I did find out when I was posting for 5 days in a row was the content that really took form and performed well. And I want to talk about the type of content that I found that performed well for me. And the content mostly was focused on empathy type of messaging, identity-based messaging, content where persons saw themselves, they could relate to the pain, they could relate to the experience, they could relate to that desire or that challenge. And so those are the type of content that really worked well for me. And part of it, outside of testing and experimenting, was because I was consistent. And I talk a lot about consistency because consistency really helps you to identify what is working and what isn't working. Another thing that I also noticed just from consistently posting was that Reels perform better for me than carousels on Instagram. And if you know, Instagram is said to be pushing carousels, but for me, my Reels perform better than my carousels. And to be honest, it's my favorite thing to create, even though it takes a little bit more time. But in the sense, it depends on the type of content as well. So I have been working on for quarter 2 is to change my approach to reels, because I do find that sometimes even the length can be a bit too long. And if the video length is too long, sometimes you tend to lose your audience if you're not hooking them in that beginning. So that's something personally I know I'm working on as I'm growing my brand. And I'm talking a lot about content because with growing your brand and positioning yourself online, it's really about just creating content as well. There's offline things that you will have to do, but there are some online things that you have to do to just build awareness, let people know about you, and to gain that reach. And so, just really testing and experimenting has been my number one thing that I've really gotten from quarter 1 for me in terms of growing my brand. Another key thing for me too is, who am I becoming, right? So you might know me as someone with a 9 to 5, with a side hustle. Who am I becoming? I am now a full-time entrepreneur. Life looks totally different for me. My services look different. My offerings look different. I'm not just talking about Canva. I'm talking about no Canva, but branding, but online presence, and building your online camera presence and confidence. So of course, my content will look different. It will take a different shift and form, and it will also require my audience learning to trust me, right? They know me for Canva. A lot of you guys trust me in terms of my Canva knowledge, but can you trust me when I'm talking about branding? Do you trust that I know what I'm talking about? And so that takes some time. And because it takes some time means the traction to get clients might be a little slower. Like naturally, I can get a client who will reach out to say, hey, I want a Canva training, or oh, I want you to design something in Canva for me. But when it comes to branding and the strategy and all the things, it will still take some time for them to get used to me talking about things like that. So just to give you a full rundown, it's that for me, quarter 1, what it really looked like in terms of building a brand, it was a slow season. Q1 in terms of building my brand was a slow season. I experienced not having clients, not getting a lot of engagement and crickets. But I've realized that a fundamental part of it was because I'm also in the spirit of transitioning from a 9 to 5 with a side also to now full-time entrepreneur. And so the content I'm creating is not necessarily the same, but also because I didn't fully understand my audience, I wasn't really creating content for them in a way that really resonated. Then of course there's a lot more work to do. I craft that content, so the quality, I have to focus more on the quality content versus just frequency. So sure, I talk about Canva, but the way I talk about Canva will look different, will sound different. And so I have literally crafted this whole content strategy in terms of what building and growing my brand will look like, especially in this particular season. So it's just really good for me to just share with you some truths, what it looks like. A lot of building your brand is about, one, knowing your audience, knowing their pain points, what are their desires. If they don't work with you, what will their life look like? What are the things they will be challenged with? And then for you as the entrepreneur is learning to navigate the slow season. What will you do in that slow season? That is something that I have personally just been learning. And so that is something that I'm becoming more confident in, really, that in a slower season, I still have value to provide. How am I going to show up? Who am I going to talk to? And honestly, my Q1 was really just talking a lot to my audience so I can better understand them, so I can provide value for them, and but also craft messaging and tone and voice that really resonates. So if you like this and you would love to see, like, quarterly review of my brand, or even just, case studies of other brands, those who are doing it well, those who you could learn from, and the problem mistakes they're making and lessons, then of course comment and let me know.